And Corey Salem, I believe that you and I are live on LinkedIn. Good
That's what it
morning.
says for me. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Awesome. I'm going to introduce Corey Salem in a few minutes here, but I just want to start by welcoming anybody that's joining us live or possibly joining us as a recorded replay. I am Cynthia Forstman. I'm one of the co-founders of Culture Talk. And if you're new to Culture Talk, if you're not familiar, we have a platform that allows organizations and leaders to turn workplace culture into a tangible asset, one that you can measure, one that you can shape, you can transform, you can align people and business strategies. That's the work we're doing at Culture Talk. At the center of it are two validated assessment tools that allow us to measure storylines we call archetypes and allow organizations to really create a common language for talking about culture and moving it in directions where the organization wants to go. So we do these lives once or twice a month. We have been on a series of conversations on team building with archetypes. So how do you use the storylines we call archetypes to help engage and build the team? And you'll notice even in mine and Corey's little notes here, we have three of our top archetypes for each of us. Corey having the lover, sage, innocent, me having creator, lover, caregiver. These are some of the storylines that are part of the Culture Talk framework. You'll learn more as we get moving on here. But first, let me introduce Corey Salem, today's guest. He and his team have had a really cool team building experience at the beginning of the summer and again later in the summer with the same client. So we want to hear about that experience in particular. Corey is one of our certified partners at Culture Talk. So he's come through a certification program. He is also the director of sales and client success at an awesome company called Unique Venues. Welcome, Corey.
Thanks, Cynthia. Really glad and happy to be here. I appreciate you asking me to be a part of this and to share a little bit about our experience from the past couple of months.
Wonderful. Why don't you start before we get into the client experience? Tell us a little bit about you and about Unique Venues.
Sure thing. Yeah, so as Cynthia mentioned, I'm the director of sales and client success with Unique Venues, but my professional career has kind of been interesting where right out of college, I started at Unique Venues, and then I took a little bit of a detour and I worked as the director of member engagement for a higher education association, NACIS, which is the National Association of College Auxiliary Services. And then came back to Unique Venues in January 2020 to sit in this role that I am today. And obviously the last couple of
Just in
years,
time for a pandemic. Good timing.
precisely,
Yeah.
precisely. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in just, I guess 3.5 years of being on the Unique Venues team. And thankfully we're back on the upswing. So that's really good.
Yeah.
I completed my Culture Talk certification last year with Teresa as the certification lead, and it was a really great experience. I'm really excited about these personality assessments, whether it's the Culture Talk or others. So to go through the certification process was really enlightening and really exciting because not only am I now a certified partner going to campuses or other venues and conducting these trainings or assessments and validations, but the Unique Venues team also has relied on the Culture Talk assessment for organizations in the past. And that was really my first introduction to this platform. So to be able to go through the certification process and really learn about something I was already interested in was great. So here at our team, like I said, we've used the organizational assessment twice now in, I think it was like a 12-year span for,
Maybe.
yeah, for our brand assessment and to kind of put together who we are and how we exist as an organization for our industry, our clients, and the folks that are using our platform, and to help influence marketing and sales language, but also our own customer service approach. But then we also just use it as the individual assessment within our team. It's part of our onboarding process for new hires. It's something that we keep central to how we communicate and what we do as individuals of this team. So it's a really core part of Unique Venues as we exist today.
Yeah, very cool. I love that you both are doing it internally, because when you really have the experience of living and working with these storylines, then I think it's easier to translate out to a client. I want to ask a question, Corey, because you came back to Unique Venues at the beginning of the pandemic, and I just want to give a plug here to Unique Venues, as the
Sure.
name so aptly describes. You are a membership and marketing professional services kind of organization that represents unique venues, one of a kind meeting places. And that's really kind of the connection to college campuses. And you use the word affiliated. Can you give us just a little bit more meat on that?
Totally. Yeah. So Unique Venues, this is our 37th year, and our founding is rooted in college campuses. Our founder went to UNLV, and she was a professional meeting planner and realized that there's more to event spaces than just ballroom C at the Marriott, no offense, but wanted to introduce her clients to, like you said, one of a kind event spaces. And it first started out as a directory, a printed directory that she would mail out to event planners of, I think, like 30 or 31 colleges and universities throughout the US that would sell their available space in the summer months to groups wanting to come and convene on campus. Over the years, we've expanded who our clients are beyond just colleges and universities. So we work with restaurants, bowling alleys, movie theaters, museums, art galleries, you name it. But colleges and universities are still very core to our client group. There's other organizations and associations out there that do focus on the collegiate conference and events industry. But from the marketing and sales perspective, we really are the leaders in helping those campuses, put together a strategy, implement a strategy, and grow their business. Because the way that we support our clients, there are some venues that we work with that are dedicated event spaces. That is their bread and butter. But a majority of our clients rely on this selling of their event space for auxiliary and ancillary revenue generation beyond what their primary mission and focus is. So
Right.
what's unique to these colleges, universities, is they're kind of like, when it comes to culture, they're kind of like a Russian nesting doll, where there's what you see on their brand or on their website or with their athletics, if you're into their sports or the academic side. But as you peel the layers, you get these subcultures and subgroups that
Yeah.
exist within a college campus. And it really is dependent on what your reporting lines are. So there's the president, and then there's the finance and administrative side, the student affairs side. Again, in my former role, there's the auxiliary service side, which we always joked was like the junk drawer of college campus departments that are focused on generating revenue. And really kind of where you're reporting on campus, who your bosses are, and then what are the departments that make up those larger divisions. It can really lead to a mix of cultures where, even though the primary campus has their dedicated branding and culture, each of those subgroups and departments maybe has a different focus or has different values, or employs people that have different areas of expertise that really create this really nice melting pot of different professionals. And then when you add in the layer of student staff as well, it just brings on even more of a diversity with who the team is.
Yeah, I love that kind of groups within groups, and
Yeah.
the Russian doll analogy, because a lot of large organizations will have that experience that we are put out there and marketed under kind of the capital B brand, but actually the way it works around here in this group and that group, it's connected, but it may be also distinct. And I know I want to take us now to the client. So you were working with a very large college university in the Virginia Public University system. And the time frame is May. Take me back there. Why did they reach out to you? What was going on specifically around teaming that they felt like they really needed a little shot in the arm, a little boost for how they were working?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this particular client of ours has been with us for several years, and they've relied on us for more than just marketing and sales support, similar to this training that we performed over the course of our relationship with them. And fast forwarding to the start of this, well, really the end of last year and the start of this year, they had a major change to their leadership team within their organization. And it wasn't one of those scary changes. It was a positive change. It was people moving on to other opportunities. But it led to a point where even though the people that I work with directly kind of in the summer housing and residence life division, they were reporting to a brand new leadership team. And as part of that, they wanted to explore their relationship to customer service and customer success. And as we engaged with them about what that training might look like, the topic of Culture Talk was brought up. And as we pulled that thread in that conversation, we learned that the staff changes were more than really just kind of the professional staff, and that this population of student staff that's really important to the success of their organization was fairly new as well. There were a lot of people involved there that might have been part of their academic year residence life team, but now they're entering into this summer residence life team for the first time. Or maybe it was someone that was starting with the residence life team as a student staff brand new in the summer. So they had this nice mix of not only new professional staff, but also the student staff who were there and hired to help oversee the operations of their summer conference season. So as we explored this, we also found that this institution, relies on strength finders assessments. And as we explored and introduced them to Culture Talk, they really resonated with, I think the main thing was like the shared language that exists in the Culture Talk framework and assessment, because it was something that, as we talked about these 12 archetypes and what they look like on an individual level, they were really excited to present that to their team and then have a shared framework to work off of as a new team and organization with a shared vision and goal.
Okay, so they're coming into May 2023. Is this like the first full in swing summer season, if you will, since the pandemic? Are they ramped back up?
It wasn't their first one since the pandemic, but it was definitely their largest summer since the pandemic. And that was reflected in the size of the team as well.
Yeah. And I love that you're talking about this inflection point of a change in leadership, because we do often see when there's a change in leadership, this opportunity to revisit some of those core key conversations around who are we? Who are we as individuals and as members of the team and as a culture of residence life on this college campus? So it sounds like a lot of new faces coming together. And tell me why you say customer service. You said that when we met previously, and I think, oh, it's funny, I don't think about college and customer service. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny to pair those two together. And the way that we approached it is that your residents in the academic year are students first, but they're also customers. They are paying to live on campus a lot, to exist within this community. And again, back to the revenue generation aspect of summer conferencing services on a college campus, you are bringing in customers as well. And for residence life staff, you are the face of that institution. You are the retail worker at the Gap or at Dairy, you are the brand to that person, whoever you're engaging with. And customer service is such an important aspect of that. And I like that our CEO is a customer service guru. He's been, presenting on that topic for years, but now we found a way to integrate Culture Talk into this training as well, because the archetypes provide such a strong framework for where your strengths are, where your shadows are, what you need to be aware of. And it's a nice mirror to let you see how you exist in that role and in that setting.
Yeah.
So with the customer service piece in general, we wanted to really highlight the 12 archetypes and allow through the validation process for those. I think there were about 45 to 50 people that had taken this assessment, and allow them to make that connection to not only the 3 archetypes that are the highest scoring and their latent archetype, which was their lowest score, but all 12, to really allow them to put together their picture and their results, and not just allow the score to kind of dictate that for them.
Yeah.
And it was really good for us to have the backbone of customer service being that focus point, because it allowed us to have like a something to discuss strategically and intently during the conversation, with the culture talk as the setting for that.
So it gave you a framework within which to think about, how do I show up in a customer service role?
Right.
So just for the sake of people listening, it sounds like the way you designed this engagement is that the 45, 50 people that were part of it all took the Culture Talk for Individuals assessment ahead of time. And you actually get, when you take that assessment, you get your score on all 12 of the archetype patterns, which I think is, the feedback we hear is like, wow, it's so juicy and nuanced that you can't put me in a box, right? I am some unique combination of these patterns, and they show up, you mentioned focusing on the top 3. We often think about the top 3 as sort of our core and supporting patterns, the things we're known for, the things that people count on us for. But also within these core and supporting patterns, like there's like the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's the days when I'm firing on all cylinders and my archetypes are showing up in beautiful customer service, and there's times when I'm stressed and tired, where maybe I'm expressing more of the shadow of some of those same storylines. Did you get a chance to lean into that at all?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. So we had sent the unique link assessments to the participants a few weeks ahead of our engagement being on site. Because like you said, and I prepped them for this, that whenever you finish the assessment, you will receive your profile. And a lot of it was clear to me that they were really engaged in the process, because whenever I showed up on the day in May, whenever we led this, the first thing one of the professional staff said to me is that, like, everyone really enjoyed the assessment. People were talking about it. So they clearly read, like they did their homework. So it made going into the conversation really easy. But to get back to your point, it was really funny to me. And what I really like about Culture Talk as a framework is that even though you get this score of your top 3 and you're late, and you can relate to every single type and within the Culture Talk framework. And even like I would say, who leads with caregiver, then we dive into caregiver. So I knew who was, relating to what. But even whenever I'd get up or pull up the slide about, the creator or the magician or the revolutionary, especially when I got to the shadow part of that, I'd see just people kind of like shaking their head and laughing in their seat, because you're clearly resonating with them and you said something that they see in themselves on a daily basis. So it was really cool to see those light bulbs go off in the room as we're exploring these 12 archetypes.
Yeah. It's I think that it's sort of a safe way to see the fullness of ourselves, to appreciate the things that we can own and claim as strengths that maybe we put on our resume and we lead with, but also to know that those gifts come with, unforeseen consequences sometimes that we call the
Yeah.
shadow.
Yeah.
Unintended consequences of being a particular pattern. Okay, so you have them all take the survey, you bring them into a large group setting, they're already resonating, they've read their reports, now you're having them sort of validate a
Yes.
profile. And
Yeah.
then how did you take the session from there to really drive home some of that experience?
Right. So for the entire training that day, we buttered them up first with a brief introduction to customer service in general, theory on it, practice, and then we entered into the dialogue, into the presentation on Culture Talk.
Mhm.
So the way that we did that is we set the stage with an introduction to Culture Talk in general. And for this, even though we, maybe in the future might pair an organizational assessment with the individual, we relied heavily on the individual assessments for this presentation.
Yeah.
Like you said, we did a group validation, which was new to me, but it was a lot of fun. I had some handouts that you all provide through your library and extensive network of different resources that we can use. And I said, have your score with you, but also don't be tied to your score. Maybe look at 6 of these types that you're really interested in. It can be your high scores. It doesn't have to be. And as I'm going through the presentation today, just jot down notes, what resonates with you, what maybe doesn't resonate with you, especially on the strengths and shadow side. So we took some time going through all 12 types, and then I let them sit with it for about 10 to 15 minutes to let them really think about what their core archetypal profile is. And after those 10 to 15 minutes, throughout that process, I was walking around, and my partner and the presenter were walking around, just engaging with people. And if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. But we let them create their archetypal profile. Now, during this and actually prior to the engagement, I was able to plot out their scores. It's really easy through your platform, again, to just download everyone's scores, 1, 2s, 3s, and latents on a grid. And I had that ready to talk about as well. But I really wanted them to identify and really relate to their profile through this process. After that, though, before we even dove into the group profile, I just asked people, and I knew ahead of time what their results were. So I did intentionally group these people into like groups of 3 or 4 with people who had other leading archetypes. So I didn't put all lovers together or all creators together. I tried my best to kind of blend these groups so that they could really learn through someone else's language what that archetype was and what it means to them. So we took 20 to 30 minutes to allow them to have that conversation, introduce themselves through this now shared vision and lens, and to use language that they are now accustomed to, and let them kind of explore that, answer questions, ask questions, because again, some of these people were new and actually didn't know who each other were. So this was a really great opportunity to do some team building and get to learn each other.
Wow, that's really cool because recognizing that it was a first experience for a lot of people coming into the team, to like, what a way to like dive deep and get to know each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I have to give this group credit that there was a lot of vulnerability on display, which was really good. And that made, things easier, because as I was walking around and listening, I could tell that they were authentic and genuine conversations that were taking place. And people were really opening up, which was, I didn't ask them to, they just chose to do that. And I think that this framework gave them the comfort in that as well.
I love that feedback, Corey, because I do think people like, there's something about storytelling that is so human, to be able to be seen, right? And not just like boxed into a particular type, but to have a profile of several types in a way of like understanding yourself and sharing yourself, that we often see that level of vulnerability. We don't ever ask for it, right? We never put somebody on the spot and say, you have to tell like your deepest, darkest secrets. But like people tend to like go deeper more easily with this kind of a system. All right. So now they're doing like a pair and share type of experience, and they're meeting people who have a different top archetype, and they're maybe meeting people on the team for the first time. Cool.
Yeah. And so how that evolved then, and I think that this next part of the training in the day was maybe the most valuable, because then I just, you don't have to get out of your groups, go back to your seat. And I asked anyone, like, is there anything that you learned that was really cool, or anything that you'd like to share on behalf of a partner? And we had a couple of people raise their hands, and that was fun. But really, I think the best part of the day was then I grouped everyone by, now this was a little bit more logical with these groupings, where you were partnered with like closer teammates based on the communities that you were overseeing. And I integrated the professional staff here as well, so that there was an opportunity for people to have conversations. And then I threw their archetypal distribution on the screen, an Excel sheet of that, or a graphic. And I highlighted where the primary archetypes were, the supporting archetypes were of this group, the latent archetypes. And it was kind of an aha moment for them, where they saw in this particular group that they were lacking a lot of jesters, lovers, magicians, revolutionaries, and rulers. And explorers as well. So now, based on this framework of what we talked about today, I said, work with your groups now to talk about your team's strengths and how you show up with your individual archetypes, and not weaknesses, but where are areas that you can grow on during the next several months? What can you rely on? Where can you grow? And what are some things that you need to be aware of with this distribution as well? Again, allow them 15 to 20 minutes to talk about this as a group. And then I actually asked each group to kind of go back and share the number one thing that resonated with them. And I think that was the best moment of the day, because you got some really good suggestions from groups, some really good feedback, and a lot of people agreeing with one another on those areas.
Yeah. So you explored the gaps.
Explore the gaps. Yep.
Explore the gaps, which are going to exist on any team. But again, this framework kind of gives that opportunity to figure out what those gaps are going to be.
Yeah.
Corey, you were called back to this group, and tell me about. I'm gonna actually pop my camera off for a minute, because I just got a note that my laptop's about to die. But I'm with you. I'm going to plug it in, and if you could just tell me what happened that you got called back. Yeah. Like, what was they had positive experience.
They had a positive experience, and part of the callback was to do something similar for their academic year residence life team. So instead of talking to a group of 50, we were invited to talk to a group of like 220, a lot more student staff, but some new professional staff as well. And again, talk about customer client service, but in this time, the framework is engaging with students, maybe parents of students. And another aspect of this presentation was conflict resolution and mitigation. But there was such a big hit with the CultureTalk assessment, is that they wanted us to come back and just review CultureTalk again as a framework and give an overview of the 12 types, and to talk about, again, maybe this time, not so much customer service, but talking about how conflict exists within the 12 archetypes, generally speaking and broadly speaking, just to help them prepare for this academic year. That was a little bit of that was fun. A group of 200 is a lot, but it worked out. We were able to kind of figure out a way to present this. But the story with this campus doesn't stop there, because at the end of it, the chief housing officer approached us and said, well, we're excited to bring you back next year. And we said, well, we're excited to come back next year. But she also said about how, and this is pulling everything back to kind of where we started, that there are different departments and groups on campus that could use the same exact conversation framework and model to explore how they what they value, how they operate, what their strengths are. So I think that's the next part with this campus, is exploring the other departments and where we might be able to come in and have those conversations with their teams.
Yeah, I love two things that you've said. One is, coming back and layering on to the initial
Mhm.
conversation, now a new angle.
Yeah.
Before we were talking about how do we provide customer service, what are we lacking in terms of customer service, what are our stories. Now the opportunity to talk about conflict, that's another aspect of Archetypes. It's kind of a gift that keeps on giving, because through these storylines there's a lot of different conversations we can have about personal growth, team dynamic. And because we're in this team theme right now, really having that language of working together and working through conflict can really make team like that, creates agility on teams. It creates the ability for people who know themselves and have that awareness to jump into another team more quickly and to
Yeah.
show up in a way that's empowered. So you've got kind of both the opportunity with a group that's done some archetype work to keep taking the conversation further, but I really look forward to hearing, how does it continue to grow on this campus, right? What happens when more people have that language and that way of relating to each other? Really exciting to see what happens next for the
Yeah.
work.
And I think too, with this population, there are a lot of students who will make this their career. What they're doing in the residence life team now is something that they really have an emotional connection with, and they can make a career out of it. And I think too, I mean, there were, I think, 3 or 4 in the summer, or excuse me, the May session, that were then at the end of the summer going to a master's program at a different college university. And I think to introduce these student aged population to the Culture Talk framework
Mhm.
will lead to more opportunities at other campuses in the
Yeah,
future, because they've gone through this training, they knew how it impacted them, and it's something that I think they'd be willing to explore with a new group.
yeah.
And not only at a new campus, but at this public institution we were at, there's a new crop of student staff every year coming through, and it's something that the people who have done it before will say, "Oh, you need to do this culture talk. We need to know what your types are, how
Oh,
you
great.
lead."
Well, we're going to hope for that.
Yeah.
Think that one of the things that you're saying that really resonates, like, this is new, but it's new. It's new compared to other assessment tools, but it's also
Mhm.
kind of timeless, right? Like
It's
archetype
relevant.
storytelling is
Yeah,
just, as you said, people, like, even if it wasn't their top types, they totally relate to these 12 different patterns. So
exactly.
lots of opportunities. Tell us, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they're interested in, talking to Unique Venues about any of your services, or any of these kinds of workshops.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I've got a profile on the Culture Talk website under the certified program leader. But
Uh-huh.
for unique
Oh, find a
venues, find a
partner.
partner. Thank you. Yeah. And then for unique venues, uniquevenues.com is where you can find more information about my company and kind of what we do as our main source of support to venues with marketing and sales. My email is Corey, which is Corey at uniquevenues.com. You can reach out to me that way. And there are other, intake forms on our website if you'd like to connect with us there.
Yeah, wonderful. I know we've long known Unique Venues, and it's a wonderful business, a wonderful team. It's exciting for us to see you grow this aspect of the offering.
Mhm.
And we've mentioned from the beginning that Corey is one of our certified partners. So if this conversation resonates with you and you're curious about how to make culture tangible, how to bring storytelling really front and center in an organization to develop leaders and teams, to align people and culture and purpose. Those are some of the things that you can do with the Culture Talk system. I'm happy to have a conversation with you if you want to drop a note to me or reach out to me on LinkedIn. We'll also drop into the show notes here a link to our next certification program, which is coming October 31st. So it'll be our last session for 2023. We'd love to fill those sessions, and we're happy to share more. So reach out. And with that, Corey, on to the rest of our Thursday and into a holiday weekend here in the US. You got any holiday weekend plans?
We have an extra long holiday here at the company, so we're off tomorrow and Monday.
Wow.
And me personally, I've got some college friends visiting, so I'm really excited for that. How about you?
Oh, it sounds perfect. I have a friend visiting as well
Nice.
and hoping to get a hike in this weekend.
This
Weather is
should be
turning
good.
cold. So everybody
Perfect.
enjoy your weekends, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, Corey.
Bye.